Hey guys, this is Mr. Howard. We're going to be engaging into our study of Section 2, dealing specifically with secondary industries. All right, so let's go ahead and dive straight in. Now, in the previous section, we were dealing with primary industries where you were taking various raw materials and converting them into different items such as furniture, clothes, etc. But when we're talking about primary industries, they don't necessarily change the form of natural resources. Secondary industries are responsible for really turning raw materials into a useful form or product. All right, raw materials, make sure you write this down, are natural resources that have been extracted um, by, by primary industries. Okay. Now, there are two types of secondary industries. Secondary industries that are connected to construction as well as manufacturing. Now, we're going to see how both of these types kind of work together in tandem in order to provide quality services to the general public. All right. So, let's kind of unpack construction real quick. Now, one of the things that we have to recall is that humankind has utilized a plethora of natural resources when we're talking about construction. Even historically, when we're talking about architectural designs of buildings, various edifices, such as government buildings, homes, skyscrapers. When we're talking about businesses, but the thing about it is, Cain in the Bible, who's the son of Adam and Eve, is actually credited as the first person to build the first city. The Cainites were one of the first to create civilization in the earth. They're descendants of Cain. But the Bible doesn't necessarily articulate or posit what materials, or which materials, I should say, were utilized during that time frame. But what we do see in the Bible further along in the Old Testament is the first great building, which is the Tower of Babel, which was made of brick and mortar. All right, so make sure you mark that down at the Tower of Babel as the first great building infrastructure that is mentioned in the Bible. Okay, now outside of the Tower of Babel, we see that there are other civilizations that really begin to create more um, sophisticated forms of construction, all right, such as the Egyptians who utilized cut stone in order to build pyramids. Make sure you write that down in your notes. There will be a question asking you which element did the Egyptians utilize in order to build their pyramids? And also the Romans. They are credited for the utilization of cement in order to build the great colosseums and palaces that their emperors would reside in. We're going to unpack that a lot in next year's study of world history dealing with the Roman Republic as well as the Roman Empire. Okay, so make sure you mark that down. Now, in the 1850s, okay, during the course of the agricultural revolution, we also began to see how engineers begin to research various methodologies on how to reinforce concrete with steel. All right. And what they found was that this was a very important discovery that could be utilized in the formation of dams, bridges, as well as skyscrapers. All right. So that is why, if you watch the documentary Men Who Built America, specifically dealing with Andrew Carnegie, he is credited for being the titan of the steel industry. And one of the ways that he was able to really increase his prominence in this industry is by utilizing steel in a manner to whereas it can then be reinforced with concrete in order to construct long-lasting buildings that to this very day, especially in New York, when you're talking about the Carnegie Hall, we still see those buildings up and running in 2020. Okay, so make sure you highlight all three byproducts of the concrete and steel invention in the 1850s. You will be seeing that on your quizzes. Now let's go ahead and shift gears to manufacturing. Now manufacturing and in the earlier times really served as a significant portion of human history, mainly because most of the land areas were very agrarian. Agrarian meaning that they utilize natural entities or elements from their various farmlands that they owned, and they utilize it in order to create everyday items such as clothing, bowls to eat out of, tools to not only utilize for their farmlands, but also tools to utilize around the house, eating utensils. All of these things are interconnected with manufacturing. Okay. Now, just to make sure you guys notate this, make sure you write this down that the word manufacture originally meant to make by hand. Okay, so make sure you bear that in mind. You will see that on your quiz. Now, as cities grew in their prominence and size, so did the skills of the residents. They became more specialized over time. This is where we begin to see, for example, blacksmiths who are credited for creating weapons, eating utensils that are made out of metal. They're credited for the creation of various tools, such as shovels, rakes, things of that sort, in order to effectively till the land on farming areas. So blacksmiths became prominent. Bakers, individuals who baked bread, was very instrumental during a time period to whereas bread was a very common entity that was utilized for everyday consumption, even to this very day. So we begin to see specialized entities that begin to unfold and formate as a result of um, individuals who begin to garner skills in those respective areas of specialization. Now we're going to get into specialization in 10th grade when you guys take world history. We're going to be unpacking specialization and organization and how that relates to the formation of civilizations. So make sure you bear that in mind as we progress. But however, these cottage-based industries progressively became overtaken by larger factories. So this is where we begin to see a paradigm shift, if you will, which going back to section one, dealing with the agricultural revolution, um, this is where we really begin to see a shift when science and machinery and engineering go hand in hand, and they begin to increase in terms of the level of productivity based upon the invention of machines that really are taking the place of humans. Now, I know this is probably echoing to the movie The Matrix in a sense where the machines are taking over. But in essence, this is where we really begin to see how technology is slowly changing the dynamic of how businesses operate and produce their products on a mass scale. All right, so make sure you mark down that manufacturing in this context actually meant something totally different than it did in its earlier times. So now, manufacturing, which originally meant to make by hand, is now shifting in its context and now refers to big businesses and machines that turn raw materials into products on a massive scale. Okay. And so as a result, we see that this has become corporate as opposed to individual. All right. This is where the concept of corporate headquarters, corporate offices, corporations are all derived from the shift in this paradigm when you're talking about manufacturing. All right. So make sure you bear that in mind, which leads us into the creation of various industries that then are launched throughout the course of what is called the Industrial Revolution. Okay. Now, during the Industrial Revolution, this is where we really begin to see how key discoveries and inventions between 1750 and 1850 are now really uh, just taking over not only certain parts of the world, dealing with Great Britain, for example, and then shifting to the United States, but also other parts of the world as well when we start talking about Germany, France, China, and Asia. Japan, going back to the 1860s, as they're beginning to adopt more westernized concepts and inventions and infuse those things into their everyday lives. All right, these are things that you have to remember. But the Industrial Revolution really gathered its footing in the textile industry of Great Britain. Make sure you write that down and remember that. You will need to know that for your quiz and test. Because during earlier times, many individuals, everything was made by hand, as we indicated in the previous slide. All right, but this also resulted into a decreased level of efficiency, meaning that if you place an order for a particular product, you probably won't get it until a month or two from that point in which you ordered it, compared to at this point where we're seeing more machines being developed, where something that used to take a month now only takes 2 or 3 days. All right, so this is where we really begin to see how the Industrial Revolution not only increased in size, but it also increased the profitability of these industries. And it also um, kind of shifted the patterns of behavior of the consumers. All right, because now they're starting to get used to receiving items a lot more quickly than usual. All right. So, in response to this increasing consumer demand, inventors were able to develop machines that simplified as well as quickened production of those various products. Now, the groundbreaking invention that really changed the landscape of everything was the steam engine. Make sure you highlight that, make sure you write that down. That the steam engine is what really took things to an entirely different level throughout the course of the Industrial Revolution. All right, because it was the steam engine that really allowed the Industrial Revolution to go from something that took place in one area or maybe two areas to now becoming a globalized phenomenon. All right, so make sure you write down that the steam engine is credited for this strong level of contribution to the massive development of the Industrial Revolution. Now, it didn't stop there though. That was just the first one. The second revolution took place in the second half of the 19th century. All right. Now, this is where we begin to see how scientists within chemistry, physics, and biology really begin to discover different ways to really make things operate a lot faster than usual. All right. So this is where we begin to see the application of science to industry. This is called technology. Make sure you write that down. You will see that on your quiz. The application of science to industry is called technology. It is when we're talking about technology in the latter part of the 19th century, this is where we see the growing demand of the harnessing of electricity. All right, make sure you highlight that, the harnessing of electricity. I would highly recommend, if you guys have Amazon Prime, to check out the documentary Men Who Built America. Men Who Built America. We started watching that in class before the spring break period, but that is definitely a documentary that will unfold and unpack a lot of these progressive elements that unfolded in America as well as certain parts of Europe. All right, but the harnessing of electricity, the battle between Nikola Tesla as well as Thomas Edison, is really something that is really a sight to see and really had a profound level of impact on the economy. In addition, other inventions also had a massive impact on industries as well. When we start talking about these three very important inventions, all right, really shifted the landscape even more. The invention of gasoline engines, telephones for communication, and telegraphs for communication. Now, these three elements, all right, is what allowed businesses to now position the location of their headquarters anywhere in the world. Now, the reason why I place emphasis on anywhere in the world is because you got to remember, before that, the steam engine was very important. So businesses would have to purposely locate their headquarters and their mines or their areas where they could produce their products. They will always have to locate them near rivers or large bodies of water, mainly because they would have to establish a pipeline that leads them to that water supply, which in turn would be able to create the steam that was needed in order to power their engines. Okay? Now, since things are transitioning from water based and steam to now gas, now you no longer need to position your buildings near bodies of water. You can position them anywhere in the world. Okay, so this gave businesses the flexibility to position their factories wherever they saw fit. Okay, so make sure you bear that in mind. Gasoline engines, telephones, as well as telegraphs. Now, by the 20th century, this is where we see how these inventions are so responsible for creating new industries, especially in the automobile, dealing with gas engines and airplane industries as well. All right. Now, during the second half of the 20th century, this is where we begin to see another shift. All right, which is the shift that we're currently in right now. All right, this is where we see the third wave of revolution, which is called the information age, also known as the computer age or the electronics age. Now, this is where we see high tech industries such as computer chip manufacturing. This is where Apple, IBM come into the fold, are utilizing Microsoft, all right, are utilizing the most advanced discoveries of science and engineering in order to produce tech that is shifting how businesses conduct their affairs and how consumers consume the products that businesses are producing. All right. This is where we also see how the formation of robotics and the infusion of computers have increased the levels of efficiency of industries even more. So much so until fewer people are needed to work in factories in order to produce these manufactured goods. All right. Now, let's go ahead and shift gears to durable and non durable manufacturing before we close out section two. Okay. Now, these are two different types, okay, of manufacturing industries that are so essential to how those industries operate. We have durable and non-durable manufacturing. Now, non-durable manufacturing is our it pretty much consists of companies that make products that generally last less than a year. All right, examples of this is, for example, food, chemicals, fossil fuels, wood pulp that's utilized in order to make paper. These elements are non-durable products. All right, they have an expiration date on them. That's why, according to law, if you have anything connected to, let's say, food or chemicals, for example, chemicals that are utilized in various medicines, things of that sort, they always have an expiration date on it because those are non-durable products. All right. In comparison to durable manufacturing, which pretty much construct or make products that last more than a year. All right. Now, some of these products are connected to the building of homes, furniture, and as well as machines. All right. Now, there are five sources that we have to focus on when we're talking about these durable products. Number one, lumber, when we're talking about wood, stone, clay, glass, okay, and obviously metals. Now, metals are very essential, okay, but we definitely want to place a lot of emphasis on how that has developed over time, okay. Now, that concludes our our study of section two. I look forward to seeing you guys in section three dealing with tertiary industries. Take care.